Greetings and Happy New Year from HillCrests Vineyard. As we get into January of 22 here, the new year, we have a very classic set of wines for our wine club. Some beautiful, beautiful Riesling out of the Mosel that some of you have had before that we've pulled out of the library. We have our first Umpqua Ribera in a while, which is once again the Cabernet with Tempranillo blend that we've done for a number of years, as well as a super classic wine from an old region of Italy that kind of portends to what's in the future of that area. It's something that a lot of people in the business don't know about, a variety that I think we'll see a little play here in Umpqua Valley at some point. So anyway, I'd like to start off with the Umpqua Ribera. So I mentioned classic early on, 2018 vintage Umpqua Ribera. This spent about 3 years in barrel force, so very typical kind of classic HillCrest, at least twice as long as most people put Tempranillo in the barrel, and a lot of reds for that matter in Oregon. 18 was a very kind of moderate vintage, so very kind of not a lot of the exaggerated warm spells or cool spells in that. So that allows you to basically maintain beautiful acidity, which can be a challenge with Tempranillo, which tends to naturally be kind of a lower acid grape, but it tends to give you full flavor but with an elegance. And so the Umpqua Ribera this year, I usually put in closer to 20% Cabernet Sauvignon. This is just a nick below that. But what that tends to do is it tends to kind of plump it up. And Tempranillo is a little bit of a chameleon. Different parts of the world, you see it blended with things or aged for extended periods of time, or really kind of an exaggerated oak profile. I see really one of the only areas in all of Europe that uses any American oak are the regions that do grow Tempranillo. So anyway, a little bit of a small taste here. Yeah, the first thing that hits me is both black fruit on one side and then kind of like a balsam wood character. And I've talked about this in prior wine notes with some of the wines like Syrah that we produce, and it tends to be a fingerprint of some of the vineyards that we have. This is almost a little bay-like, but kind of that very perfumey, very kind of elegant character, with a little bit of almost like a licorice and then that plum, kind of like a very fruity, bright plum character. Very gentle, creamy, very deep. That architecture we talk about, that deep kind of round width and that, and very, very long wine. I'd say finer tannins than normal. A lot of that I think has to do with the vintage, both the vintage for Cabernet Sauvignon, 2018 vintage, blended with, like I said, the Tempranillo. The tannins tend to be a little bit more refined than we typically see with Tempranillo. But a super classic. Probably my favorite so far of Umpqua Ribera. This wine is very polished, very old world style. Next, we're going to move to a wine that our daughter, many of you know, Hannah, went to winemaking school in northern Italy, and a good friend of hers that she went to school with is associated with one of the most classic estates in Piemonte, Barolo. And that estate is Borgogna. And this is a winery that goes back to 1761. Which is, of course, very old by any standard. But it's a wine that's so classic that 1861, when Italy became a country, so prior to that it was 26 different states. In 1861, which is fairly recent, of course, in modern European history, Italy was formed as one, and the wine that was used at the dinner, or the lunch actually, to celebrate that event was the Barolo from this winery. Very classic producer. Concrete fermenters sound familiar, where most people have gone to stainless steel. They've actually gone back, redone their cellars, gone back to the concrete, and then Slovenian oak cask, the big Boti like we're using, that idea comes from this area. But a very classic producer and a great variety of Freisa that we've had once before. But this is a variety, once again, that today we know Barolo, Barbaresco, and Piemonte in general for the high-end wines being Nebbiolo, grape-based. The variety that made that popular, or that really put those areas on the map, was the Freisa. And classically it was made into kind of a bigger, darker, super age-worthy red wine. But later, by the 19th, 20th century, it was made into many different styles. Everything from kind of fruity, light, carbonated, to sweeter reds and that. And so it's kind of, it lost its identity somewhat, but now you begin to see great producers like Borgogna go back and begin to produce this alongside Nebbiolo in a really classic great wine. This is a wine that we had, our daughter's friend Alessandro, who was visiting, came and brought a bottle of this, and we enjoyed that wine. This is a wine that really struck me as it's bright, powerful, rich, complex, and super age-worthy. So we'll take her for a spin. But the variety's called Freisa once again. You pick up, there's a variety in northern Italy called Brachetto, and Brachetto has a really kind of high-toned, beautiful fruit. It's a cherry, but it's not like a sweet character. It's a very bright kind of cherry. This has that nose, along with kind of a dusted kind of tannin smell, a little rose petal. The area of that this wine comes from, the Romans oftentimes referred to the red wines as tarred roses, and this has a little bit of, I think, of that dried rose petal character. So very, very sweet in terms of very soft, kind of round texture, beautiful bright acid on the bottom. Tannins that are a little bit more grippy than we would be used to in like an American wine, but super, super fine, almost like you peel the orange and you leave that little rind on there, that white rind. But very, very, very fine. Really a super fantastic food wine. I think about a wine like this, and it'll only add more richness to the wine, is something along the lines of like ossobuco, maybe a mushroom risotto, this kind of thing, that this kind of a wine becomes highly, highly drinkable at that point, but once again, super, super ageable. But I can still get the fruit. I still get this kind of very bright, cherry, almost little cranberry kind of character in it, but that's super beautiful. In glass is very important to a wine like this, because of the acidity and the brightness and the focus, and that's something that's very unique about Umpqua. We tend to be higher acid. It's one of the things that drew us here from Napa. But Piemonte tends to be high acid as well. And that really kind of lends itself to the table. But a glass like this that delivers that wine to the right part of the palate is absolutely key. So that what you'd serve Pinot Noir, or we say Burgundy Balloon. So to finish up with, ultra, ultra classic. Fuder that we've made for a number of years off of a little vineyard in the village called Trittenheim with blue slate, that's green apple. And Susan and I, when we first started working overseas, the first place was Mosul and the first vineyard was this vineyard. And we've been so fortunate to go back and since about 2010 produce wine off of that. But to me, it's much like kind of coming home to mom's food and mom's cooking and favorite dishes from being young. But you can see it has a little bit more of a golden color. So it's 15, so this is kind of a re-release. We held it back in the cellar and are just releasing it. But beautiful, beautiful color that's very expressive and typical of super age-worthy, beautiful Mosel Riesling. I can pick it up, you can see the distance. I begin picking it up and it's a super beautiful, like golden, delicious tart apple character. Wow. Riesling. Super pungent, expressive, but fresh and delicate at the same time. The way only Mosel Riesling can do it. This wine has fatness, really richness, fills up my entire palate, but has this piercing acid that everything kind of glides along, or that everything is supported on. Mouth watering. Backsides of my tongue, almost like wet stone, green apple, super beautiful, super long. You know, with red wines, usually at the back end, you can see the tannins and the wood take over eventually. This wine is just pure fruit. Super expressive. In many ways, it's like Barbera. We talk about Barbera and then La Paganette, that you just have this beautiful, beautiful primary fruit, acid, and incredible length. So with that, I would like to say, enjoy your wines. We would love to hear from you, any comments, or if you like, subscribe so you can actually, when we release these, you can be notified in that. But we love what we do, and thank you for your support. And to the genie in the bottle, cheers to you.